That was Indiana, but Indiana lost in a pretty convincing fashion to number 2 Ohio State. Ohio State winning 38-15. Let's go over the highest graded players, starting off with the victorious Ohio State Buckeyes. Starting off with their edge defender, Jack Sawyer, 80.7. Linebacker Cody Simon, 79.2. Emeka Egbuka, 78.3. Travion Henderson, 74.8. Lathan Ransom, also 74.8. And then Will Howard was actually their highest graded player with an 86.4 mark. Let's go over to Indiana with their highest graded players in this loss. Terry Jones, the corner, with a 74.4 grade. Jalen Walker, 74.2. The linebacker. Another corner, D'Angelo Pond, 73.7. Tyson Lawton, the running back, at a 69.1. Linnell Carr, the edge defender, 68.6. And then Curtis Rourke, the quarterback, with a 60.4 grade. And Dawn, like I said before, yeah, Indiana lost pretty convincingly. And if you told me going into the week, hey, they lose by 23 points, I go, oh boy, their playoff chances are in a lot of doubt right now. But after all the chaos that happened, specifically in the SEC, it seems like Indiana, even with an 11-1 record, is pretty firmly in playoff picture.
Especially if they turn around next week against Purdue and beat them as convincingly as they've beaten a lot of teams on their schedule. I think this game, I think actually we learned more about Ohio State in this game than Indiana. I think Indiana's right on that this was kind of that tweener margin, especially with everything else that happened, that still kind of leaves them in the playoff picture. I think their defense is good enough to play with anybody. The first 9 games was really about their offense dominating. The last 2 games, their defense, I know they gave up 38 points on paper. I thought their defense played really well for most of the game yesterday, and they just couldn't find anything. They couldn't out-defense Ohio State. And I got to be honest with you, I would love to see Indiana get into the playoff and play a team that is somewhere in between what the rest of their schedule has been and Ohio State, who right now, they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country.
I think 2. I think really there's 2 and everyone
that's
else.
Not top 20, top 12, top 8. That's top 3, if not. They might be number 1. And I know they have the loss to Oregon by 1 point. There were some factors at the end of the game, and those might just be the 2 best teams in the country. Ohio State's defense, and we're going to dig more into this, the last couple weeks, and I think the Penn State game especially and this game, they might be hitting the level that Michigan hit last year on defense. And if they're going to hit that level, and is Oregon, we're getting to a point, is Oregon the only team capable of scoring on them?
Probably.
Is that where we're at now? Because,
and we went into saying Oregon has the best offense in college football.
Because we've seen them since twice in person where Penn State scored 6 points on offense, and Indiana, for the most part, scored 7 and scored a late touchdown when it didn't matter.
Dawn, Oregon's the only game this year when they allowed 32 points to Oregon. That's the only time this year they allowed more than 17 points all season.
Yeah, we're hitting that level.
Nobody else has scored 20 on Ohio State this year. Crazy.
I think we're starting to hit that level with this Ohio State defense.
And they played Penn State and Indiana, too. It's not like they played like an easy schedule. Like Penn State and Indiana are 2, right now, playoff teams right now, and they still didn't score 20 points on Ohio State. It's absurd. So go into your stat that tells a story from this Ohio State victory.
Okay, so the game itself, we had an even game. A defensive game, an ugly one. It started to rain a little bit, but Indiana got off to a good start, especially defensively. First drive, they went up 7-0, and defense was playing well. And they made the 2 mistakes that you can't make when you're trying to beat a team like Ohio State on the road. You had the drop punt that gave the ball to Ohio State at their own 7-yard line right before the half. It was a 7-7 game, and the way Indiana's defense was playing, I think if they had gotten the punt off, that game very well could have gone to halftime 7-7. And then Indiana gets the ball back, and they're feeling pretty good about their chances. And then coming out in the second half, 3 and out, punt to Caleb Downs, give up the punt return touchdown, which
sick punt return touchdown.
He's a freak of nature. Yeah, first of all, we knew he's a freak of nature at safety, but
and you know what? After that, I tweeted it out. I was like, okay, remember when we did the episode? I'm like, why on earth is Caleb Downs taking snaps at running back? Why would you do that? And then after that punt return, I was like, oh, that's why you do that, because he's that kind of athlete.
Well, we might be setting up something next year if he can do that. But I mean, you're just talking about a primetime player making a primetime play, first of all, with Downs. But at that point, it's 21-7. You have 2 straight special teams blunders, and it's just out of hand. At that point on the road against Ohio State, I don't know that any team in the country right now could come back from 14 down against Ohio State. I'm not sure it's possible with this defense, especially for an Indiana team that was struggling in pass protection. I'll go into that in a minute. You'll go into some of that in a minute. But they made the mistakes in the middle of this game you can't make to win a game like this, especially if you're trying, not even if you're trying to, but if the game is just going in the defensive manner that it did in the first half, just can't have it. Special teams matters too, and that's really where Ohio State won this game.
Oh, it absolutely does. And the other way they won this game, Dawn, we have such a massive database at PFF with every single number you can think of, every advanced statistic you can think of. But I want to make this as simple as possible. Indiana had 68 yards passing in this game. 68. That's it. Kersing then even said after the game, he said, quote, every time we drop back to pass, something bad happened. That's exactly what happened. Literally, something bad happened. In Murphy's Law, really. Every time Indiana dropped back to throw, something bad happened. It's Indiana's fewest passing yards in a game since 2022 when it had 31 against Michigan State. And Dalton, of those 68 yards, 32 of them came on the first drive of the game when Indiana drove right down the field and scored a touchdown. They only had 36 points on all of their other drives of the game, honestly. So 3.8 yards per pass, their fewest since 2021 against Michigan. Negative .327 EPA per pass, their worst of the season. Ohio State sacked Curtis Rourke 6 times in this game. This defense dominated Indiana in all assets. They had Curtis Rourke really uncomfortable. A lot of blitz packages that Jim Knowles sent that really just confused the offensive line and confused Curtis Rourke, honestly. And the defensive backs also did a pretty good job of not allowing much to happen, right? With the blitz packages happening a lot, they were just able to stick on the receivers enough that Curtis Rourke had nowhere to go with the football. And it's the reason why that the D-line dominated, the linebackers played really well, the DBs played really well as well. The Ohio State defense, like you said before, is starting to look like the best in the country, and they proved it on Saturday.
And not just the players, because you saw some great players in our top 5 that we had there, but my most impressive here is Jim Knowles again, and I'm pretty sure I had him most impressive after they beat Penn State for that game plan that he put together. When they found out that the blitzes and the stunts were working, every play.
Yep.
Every single play. They blitzed 43.5% of the time in this game. Curtis Rourke against the blitz, and I know the numbers weren't great really against anything, but 2 for 6 for 19 yards. 4 of their 5 sacks came when Ohio State blitzed, and a 47.9 passing grade against Curtis Rourke. Indiana, lowest graded offensive game as a team all season. The pass protection the last 2 weeks. Now, granted, they played maybe the 2 best defensive lines in college football the last 2 weeks. It's not fair to fully judge their pass protection on the last 8 quarters of football, but it's a problem. And I think when we do get into, if we get into, I should say, a playoff game with Indiana, this is what I'm going to look at, is their pass protection and their ability to protect Curtis Rourke against the blitz. But once again, Jim Knowles, just masterful stuff. I mean, with the game plan, the players, the stunts, freeing guys up. It's just once he finds something that works, he stays on it till it doesn't work. And we saw this with Penn State with the coverages on the back end with the safeties and the 2 high looks. We saw it in this game up front with the stunts and blitzes and sending Cody Simon a lot and stunning Jack Sawyer 3 gaps over on the other side of the center. There was just so many things that Jim Knowles did in this game, as well as the players, to shut this team down. It's an incredible effort, and I think Ohio State, I got to be honest, and I know Texas has been really good too. Right now, I think this is the best defense in the country.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah, they've been so good this year. And Dalton, so one quarterback that did not play well was Curtis Rourke, but one that did play really well is Will Howard. I'm going in with most impressive because he had an 86.1 passing grade in this win over Indiana. 22 for 27 for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, but that interception wasn't really his fault either. But he had 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, 84.6% adjusted completion rate. He's had 4 games with an 80-plus grade this year. 3 of them came in the last 3 weeks. So he is on fire right now. And Dalton, honestly, going into the season, we had really no questions about the entire roster for Ohio State except for quarterback. And we said, Will Howard's very good, and he's a good college quarterback. Is he good enough to win a national title? I think he's proven this year, and even in the Oregon game too, he was outstanding in that Oregon game as well. I think he's proven now they can win a national title with Will Howard at quarterback. I think he is absolutely capable of doing so. Now, will they do it? Who knows? We'll see. Obviously, it's still a wide open year in college football, but I think he's answered that question of, is he capable of doing it? I think he's proven against some really good defenses. Yes, he is capable of leading this team to a national title. He's not going to carry the team to a national title, but he's capable of being the quarterback on a stacked roster like this. He will not mess it up for Ohio State. I think he's proven that so far.
No, I think the offensive line and the run game has been a little bit of a concern lately, but over the last month, Will Howard's been their best offensive player. I don't think there's any 2 ways around that. He was the best player on the field yesterday. And especially when you think about even early in the game when they were down 7-0 and they had the drive, Ryan Day likes to go for it on 4th and 10, passing up about a 50-yard field goal or so, and Howard makes 2 consecutive throws on that drive that were just tremendous. He has just been so so consistent this year, and he's getting better and better as a drop back passer as the year has gone on. And that was the biggest question. Is it just going to be he's just going to run Chip Kelly's play action stuff and RPOs, or can he actually drop back and throw the football with success, and especially with these receivers and all the weapons he has and the balance that he gives their offense right now? He was their best player yesterday. He's been their best player for a month, and I think you're right. It's starting to look like he's capable of leading them all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been playing really, really well this year, honestly. I mean, like I said, he played really well against Oregon. He played really well against Northwestern, against Purdue, had a pretty decent game against Penn State outside a couple bad decisions other than that, but he was pretty good there. And obviously this Indiana game, I would argue he's been maybe his most impressive game this season, honestly. It wasn't his highest graded game this season or highest passing grade of the season because the Purdue one is, but I think what he did, considering the circumstances, this is probably the most impressive game I've seen.
I think what got underrated with him coming over was his big game experience, even though things may have been a roller coaster at times at Kansas State. But you got to remember, go back to when
he won a Big 12 title.
He won a Big 12 title against what became the national runner-up in an overtime classic. Where you remember that game? He was dead out of gas. I remember him scoring the one rushing touchdown. He couldn't even get off the field. I mean, I think his big game experience and all that he just brings a certain toughness and a certain grit to the position. It's starting to look like Ohio State is. I mean, they were always inner circle national title contenders, but we're seeing it on the field. I think this is easily one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. And Howard is a big, big reason for it.
And it seems like, Dalton, we are on a collision course for number 1 Oregon against number 2 Ohio State in the Big Ten title game in a couple weeks. Now, of course, Ohio State has to beat Michigan in order to do that, but they're currently favored by, I think, 25 points right now in the betting odds, so they should beat Michigan. If they do that, we will get 1 versus 2 in Indianapolis, and you and I will be there in that Big Ten title game. I cannot wait to watch round 2 of that, and you even said it before, we might get round 3 of it in the college football playoff, the way this is looking right now, too. So it's insane what Ohio State's done, but also Indiana, even though you lost pretty convincingly, you're not dead yet. Right, you still can make the college football playoff. In fact, I'd still say if you beat Purdue, you're in the college football playoff. Right after everything, all the other chaos that happened on Saturday. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.